3 years after Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the fate of this beleaguered nation hangs in the balance. The largest armed conflict in Europe since World War II has profound consequences that cannot be overstated. At stake is not just the physical future, political freedom, and economic well-being of the Ukrainian people, but the very existence of their sovereign state. Russia's ambitions extend far beyond Ukraine's borders. Putin's ultimate goal? Reversing the strategic effects of the Soviet Union's 1991 dissolution and recreating a modern-day Russian empire by limiting the sovereignty of states east of the Oder-Neisse line. This wasn't hidden, it was explicitly outlined in draft treaties Russia presented to the United States and NATO in December 2021, just months before the February 22 invasion. The European Union has recognized this existential threat and increasingly sided with Ukraine. But military support alone wasn't enough. The EU needed to unify its efforts under a single umbrella and implement them more effectively and rapidly. Many EU members, including the United Kingdom, moved quickly to provide military assistance, improve diplomacy with the United States, and impose economic restrictions on Russia. Most recently, a significant development emerged. The European Union is forming a coalition of 20 countries to support Ukraine. Following the extraordinary European Council meeting, EU leaders Antonio Costa, Ursula von der Leyen, and High Representative Josep Borrell met with leaders from the UK, Turkey, Canada, Norway, and Iceland to assess the situation. These 5 non-EU countries weren't randomly selected. Turkey, in particular, stands out. While Turkey's strong role makes sense in the NATO context, this coalition extends beyond NATO to address Europe's general defense needs. Despite not being an EU member, Turkey has become indispensable. Why is Turkey so crucial? First, it controls the Black Sea Straits under the Montreux Convention, a strategic choke point that could change the war's course by affecting ammunition flow, logistics, and international trade. Second, Turkey possesses one of NATO's largest military forces and Europe's largest land force. Third, Turkish defense technology, particularly TB2 drones, has proven highly effective against Russian armor in Ukraine. Turkey's diplomatic value is equally important. It's one of the few countries maintaining direct dialogue with Russia while openly supporting Ukraine. Ankara has successfully mediated prisoner swaps and grain deals. As the United States potentially reduces its support under the Trump administration, Turkey could step in as a mediator, strengthening Europe's position that it can resolve issues without American involvement. For Ukraine's maritime trade to function, Black Sea security is essential. The EU's plans to integrate Ukraine into its single market, including agricultural products, metal industry, and digital services, requires keeping Black Sea routes open. Turkey's control there is vital. European diplomats frequently ask, how can we fully integrate Ukraine without Turkey's Black Sea support? The conclusion is clear. Without Ankara, this plan fails, leaving Russia with a gap in the Black Sea line it seeks to control. Of course, Turkey has its own interests regarding Syria, maritime jurisdictions in the eastern Mediterranean, and security operations in northern Iraq. Europe acknowledges criticizing Turkey on some points, while recognizing cooperation is essential for Ukraine. This gives Ankara leverage to potentially improve its relations with the EU. The coalition supporting Ukraine has gained momentum. The UK and France have taken leadership roles, with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer presenting the plan at a summit of 18 European and Canadian leaders. Starmer emphasized that waiting passively for a deal between Ukraine and Russia would be a mistake. Instead, Ukraine must be positioned strongly for any potential agreement. Financial support has been substantial. The UK announced a £6 billion missile deal with Ukraine and signed another agreement to provide advanced attack drones. Additionally, the UK approved a $2.8 billion military aid package from frozen Russian assets, with the first tranche of £752 million already transferred. Norway has committed €3.35 billion in aid to Ukraine and announced it will use a sovereign wealth fund worth €1.7 trillion to support Ukraine further. Germany, France, and Sweden have also provided massive military aid. These efforts aim to prevent the resurgence of a dangerous Russia. A Russian victory would significantly increase the burden on NATO members. Despite war costs, Russia's armed forces are now larger than at the start of the conflict and battle tested in ways NATO armies are not. Globally, a shrinking Ukraine could end efforts to counter unilateral annexation of territory. Russia's illegal annexation of Crimea in 2014 laid the groundwork for breaking international order, though it wasn't widely recognized. Today, Russia claims about a fifth of Ukraine in its constitutional territory. Conversely, Russia's failure to conclude the war on its terms would likely prevent further aggression against European neighbors and limit its global influence. Moscow's paralysis in supporting long-term partners in Syria partly stems from the pressing needs of its Ukrainian operations. The strategic competition between the United States and China will inevitably be affected. A victorious Russia would set a standard that China might emulate regarding Taiwan, while Moscow's failure might prompt Chinese strategic caution. For a clear outcome and complete neutralization of the Russian threat, American involvement seems essential. If the Trump administration continues to cut aid, Ukraine will struggle on the battlefield. However, if existing arms and ammunition flows continue with appropriate terms of use, Ukraine's military situation could be more manageable than feared. The question of Ukraine joining NATO remains contentious. Washington opposes Ukraine's membership, while Kyiv wants the protection of Article 5. Whatever the war's outcome, it doesn't directly affect Article 5's credibility, since Ukraine isn't currently in NATO. However, Trump's rejection of firm alliances raises doubts about America's defense guarantees. It's also unclear if Ukraine's NATO entry would completely deter Russia. Putin might still pursue smaller targets like Lithuania to connect Russia with Kaliningrad or Moldova, parts of which have been under Russian influence since the Soviet collapse. The European Union is working hard to prevent these scenarios. The 20-country coalition supporting Ukraine represents a first step toward more effective military and diplomatic support. Will the EU and NATO successfully deter Russia with Turkey's help, or will Ankara maximize its own interests through multilateral politics? The answer depends on how London, Brussels, Paris, Ankara, and Washington proceed in the coming months.